Hello, my friends. Welcome. My name is Joe. This is the Joe Martino Show. And today I'm going to answer a question that a guy wrote in and asked me about he and his dad. And then we're going to talk about what happens when we confuse sadness with depression and what happens when we don't allow ourselves to experience difficult things. Let's kick it off. This is the Joe Martino Show.
You're listening to The Joe Martino Show, a podcast dealing with all things emotional, relational, and human nature. Joe is a licensed counselor in the state of Michigan, specializing in relationship therapy. He is also the author of the book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. All advice offered in this episode is offered for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the show.
All right, welcome back. I hope that you are having a great week. Whatever's going on with your week, I hope that it is a great week. I want to read a letter. I'm not going to read the whole letter, but I am going to read a part of it. A guy wrote in, asked me some questions, actually asked me one question, did not leave his email, or at least a working email. He might have transposed something. There's a few typos. Might have happened on his phone. Sometimes when I'm typing on my phone, I tend to make mistakes, and so I'm just going to assume that I'm relatively normal. But he writes in and asks a question that's actually pretty difficult, and I hope won't take up the whole episode because I want to get to the next thing. So here we go. Let me read this email to you. All right. So it says, Dear Joe, thanks for doing the show. I really, really like it. I'm going to assume that's one of the typos. I don't believe you've ever addressed this issue. I did look through your shows, but I didn't listen to all of them. I've only been listening for about 6 months. I don't know if you've ever seen the memes online or the videos on TikTok where it says something to the effect that your dad will always be the person that wants you to succeed more than him. In fact, some of them say he will be the only person. My question is that this is not true for me and my dad. In fact, my dad is actually pretty snarky and mean about my success. It's driven a real wedge in our relationship. I'm going to assume that meant to say between us and our relationship. I'm not sure what to do, and I was thinking maybe you could do a show on it. Thanks, Steve. So that's a really big issue. And Steve, I first of all want to say, man, that sucks. I'm really sorry that you're going through that. I also I've learned this over the years. I do have to say, I haven't heard your dad's side of the story. So I don't know what his side is. That's all I'll say. I do know that this is actually something that a lot of middle-aged men are lamenting to me right now. They've built their careers, they've done their work, they've built their families, and they're hitting 40s, 50s, and their fathers who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s are not excited for them. They're not happy about their success. They're not pleased with their success. And it is driving a wedge in their relationship between the two people. And the question becomes, how do you handle that? What do you do? How do you navigate that well? And I probably could do a whole episode on that. Maybe I should, and I should just back the other one up, because I think the hard thing is, here's one of the things that I tell people all the time, and longtime listeners, you're going to remember this probably, but one of the things I tell people a lot is, hey, here's a question I have. If whoever we're talking about lived next door to you, and you knew everything about them that you currently know, and they treated you the way that they currently treat you, would you be friends with them? Would you be would they be someone that you would involve in your life beyond the just driveway? Hey, how are you, Frank? Or whatever that is. And if not, then you have to ask yourself some questions about what are healthy boundaries around how you do those interactions. If you wouldn't be friends with them simply because they were your neighbors, and you wouldn't let them into your inner circle then, and they're the same person, why are you letting them into your inner circle simply because you're related to them? And I know, like, I've probably said this every episode so far this fall. I'm going to talk about, I've got it almost written out. There's a coming reckoning for therapy. And one of the coming reckonings for therapy is that there was a run of 8 to 10 years where they just start cutting people out of their family. They just start cutting people out of their lives because therapists would not actually coach them through how to navigate those waters. So I want to be really clear, Steve. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I can't really answer your question. I would, if you came into my office, I'd want to meet with you. I'd want to meet with your dad. I'd want to meet with you and your dad together. And I'd really want to get a much fuller picture, because I've sat with clients who are like, man, I need to stop talking to this parent. And it turned out that they didn't. They just needed to do it differently. They just needed a new strategy. But to your email, this is a growing problem. This is a situation where, man, I struggle to know what to tell people, what to do. I struggle to walk that with people. And this is outside of the room, because my dad and I, we have our own issues. My dad and I, we have our own struggles. And I watch this with dads and sons, especially dads and sons, where if the son is doing something, there can be a weird run for dads. And certainly there's plenty of dads out there that are very excited for their sons. But the truth is, it can be for moms too. There are a lot of moms out there that get very upset when their daughters are more successful than them, or they're just mean. And at some point, we're going to have to talk about, as a society, the things that we're doing that seem to encourage meanness. At some point, we just need to have that conversation. I would encourage you to find somebody you trust for therapy, because no matter what, you're going to have to grieve this, right? I think this is one of the things that we get wrong about grief. We tend to think, well, if I draw this boundary, maybe I don't have to grieve the loss. You're losing, either you're going to lose the relationship, and based on some more of your email that I didn't read out loud, it seems to me that that's where you're leaning. And if that's your choice, so be it. Like I said, I don't know all of the details, but then you're going to grieve that, because the day you pick that essentially your dad dies to you that day, unless he makes some changes. And if he doesn't, or he does make changes, or you don't decide to break the relationship, you intend to stay in this painful relationship with boundaries, what happens is you then end up in a space where you're grieving the fact that you have a relationship, but it's not the relationship that you could be having. And this is hard for people. This is hard for people. Again, I sit with both daughters and sons who go through this with one or both parents, and they do all the things. They come to counseling. They're like, hey, what would different strategies look like? So we work together to build those, to put them out there. We talk about boundaries. I've had clients bring in their adult parent, and I've had older parents bring in their kid and just go rogue, just not actually follow anything that we talked about. Hey, you've got to consider this. And so I don't know how it'll go, but I know either way you're going to be grieving. Either way, you're going to struggle with the loss of what could have been, or you're going to be struggling with loss of what could have been, and the fact that you don't have a relationship with your parent. So I would encourage you, hopefully there's good counselors where you live. You didn't mention where you live. If you want to write back in and tell me that, I can help you look. I'm happy to go online and look up therapists and say, hey, maybe you want to consider these, that type of thing. It's just really hard, because you have to figure out how much of this is your parent willing to own. Is he willing to move towards you or not? And if he is, then how much are you willing to move towards him? How much are you willing to say, I would like it to be this, but all I'm going to get is that, and that's going to be good enough for me? And can you do that and grieve at the same time? And if you can, that might be what happens. That's certainly what happens with a lot of my clients. I think that can be good. It can be better. Certainly it's better than no relationship, because I will tell you, no relationship sucks. When you get to a place where you can't have a relationship with someone that is family because they refuse to own anything, they refuse to move towards anything, they minimize what they did, they use words that are borderline gaslighting. I know a word that gets thrown all around. That's incredibly painful, and that really, truly is just an awful place to be. And when you're there, or any place like there, the thing that you want to focus on is being the healthiest version of you that you can be. And I think this is where I mentioned this earlier. I think this is where therapists maybe went a little rogue earlier in to the 2000s, is where therapists, they started to teach that avoiding everybody that would upset you, and certainly there's still plenty of people teaching this, that was healthy. that healthy, you being the healthiest you, was you just cut people out that don't treat you right 100% of the time. And there was these weird things that happened around boundaries and the concept of boundaries and the idea of boundaries. And we can't ignore that, but at the same time, we do have to look at this and ask ourselves, what does the healthiest version of Steve look like? What does the healthiest version of you look like? And we're going to do this a couple ways. One, you're going to ask yourself, you're going to do a really good self-audit on what are your behaviors that are not bringing healthiness into your life and into the life of your family. And by your family, I don't mean your dad. But if you're not grieving that you don't feel that he is excited for you, then it's impossible for you to be as healthy as you could be. Because part of being as healthy as possible is you've allowed yourself space to grieve the things that you need to grieve. Part of being healthy is recognizing that there are bad things that go on in life and we can still have good lives. There are hard things that happen in life, and we can still have good lives. And so one of the things that you have to consider is, what is it that the healthy Steve looks like? What's the healthiest version of Steve look like? It's going to be, what are the things that you're grieving? What are the things that you're lamenting, that you're sad about? And that's okay. Now, I was going to talk about today, but I'm looking at the time. I don't think I'm going to get this in. Being sad is not the same as depressed. I'm going to talk about this next week now. But one of the things that just drives me crazy is I'll ask somebody, how are you doing? Like, oh man, I was really sad this weekend. I was really depressed this weekend. They don't actually say I was sad. And then I asked them, what do you mean? Well, I was sad all weekend because something bad happened, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you weren't depressed, you were sad. I'm an old man. And one of the things that I remember is that depression used to be something that we didn't diagnose until you were sad for a prolonged period of time, because at the time we recognized that our bodies had up and down rhythms that are just part of life. So Steve, I would imagine there's grief here and there's sadness here. If you want to be the healthiest version of you, you have to allow yourself to experience that. You have to allow yourself to feel those negative feelings. What one author called the dark emotions. So emotional health comes in much the same way that physical health comes. We stop doing things that are bringing harm to our body, right? So if you're smoking cigarettes, you stop smoking cigarettes. If you're overeating or eating a lot of processed foods or eating out a lot, we stop doing those things. But then we flip that, right? And we want to also get exercise in. We want to lift some weights. We want to get some walking or cardio in, and we want to get out into nature. If we're just constantly inside, right, that's not good for your physical health. It's also not good for your mental health. And so one of the things you want to do is you want to go through and just do a really good self-audit and ask yourself, what are the things that are in my life that are maybe not helping me be healthy? And are there behaviors connected to those things? Are there behaviors that I need to recognize are not helping me? And maybe they're a legitimate response to the trauma that has come to your life through your dad. Maybe they are. But are they helping you have healthiness? So in other words, I worked with a client who was 54, was struggling with substance abuse. And most of it was rooted in he was still chasing parental approval, had very highly critical parents, and was just chasing these highly critical parents. And what that left him was behaviors that soothed but weren't helpful. And so you want to look for those first. Are there behaviors that you're doing that are helping to soothe your grief? And then do you, like you're going to need to stop them, right? You're going to have to stop those negative behaviors. You're going to have to stop those behaviors that are bringing unhealthiness to your life, because that's how we get healthy. It's not the only way, but that's the first step. And then we start to look for, what are the healthy ways that you can act that bring mental and emotional health to your life? What are the things that you can do that bring mental and emotional health to your life? One of the things that I often tell clients, if you're struggling chasing approval or from your parents, or you're struggling chasing the I love yous from your parents, one of the best healthy behaviors that is a counterbalance to that we can engage in is we then start to find people that we can validate. You start to find people that you can honestly validate, that you can say, hey, I see that you did that, and I want you to know that it's good. That you can tell them, hey, I see the effort you're putting in, and it's good. If it is, we don't want to be the generation that makes that stuff up, right? And we can lean into that, and we start to lean into healthy behaviors so that we are building mental and emotional wellness and resilience in our lives. And this is without anything happening with your dad, because the reality is you only control your half of the relationship. You only control how you interact. Now, some of that will limit or give him access, but you don't control what he does with that limit or access. And not only that, but you have to control the rest of your life and think about it holistically, which does beg a question. What do I mean by thinking about your life holistically? Part of thinking about your life holistically is the hard realization that your dad just isn't the whole story. He's not your whole life. He's not your entire life. And so you have to look at all the areas of your life and work on those being healthy, right? So I have bad knees to the point where they want to do surgery. I don't know if they want to, but they've suggested that that's the next step in trying to get over the pain. And so this has changed how my body mechanics work. And in order for my body mechanics to work well, I have to think about my body holistically. I have to work out other parts of my body. You can't work out your knees, but I have to work out my legs differently. I can't run. And so I have to do different things to help my legs work right. And to be honest with you, I got a little wrapped up in then this is what I want to caution you against with your dad. I got a little wrapped up in the fact that my knees were bad, that they needed fixed, that I stopped working out my body. I stopped actually pushing myself. For a while, 2 years ago, I walked, I don't remember exactly, 200 or 300 miles for the year. I think it was about 270. And that was one of my goals, was I think to walk 250, and I did 270. But my knees started to hurt, and so I stopped. Started to hurt more than normal. And so I stopped. And that knee pain brought leg pain. And so I stopped lifting weights with my legs. And I just was thinking about it one day. I'm like, you know what? The problem is I actually need to exercise when there's pain. Not the exercise bringing pain, but there's just pain from the things that are wrong, so that I can strengthen my legs. And somehow that helps my knees feel better. Now, not all the time. The other day I had a great workout. My legs were feeling great. We have a step down from our kitchen into our mudroom. I took that step weird, and my knee hurt the rest of the night. I ended up over at a friend's business. It's a concrete floor. Stood there, lots of pain, lots and lots of pain. But by and large, when I work out consistently, my legs feel better. And I need to chase that reality for my knees. You need to chase it for your mental and emotional health. The truth is, I do too. And everyone listening to this does as well. And so this means looking at all areas of your life and asking yourself, how healthy am I there? Maybe doing a family audit. Ask your kids if they're teenagers, if they're adults. Ask your wife or your life partner. How do you think I'm doing? I understand there's this thing going on with my dad, but how's the rest of my life going? How are the other areas of my life? How are they working right now? And how do I improve? What do I need to improve on? So Steve, man, listen, my heart goes out to you. I know that the situation you're in is a hard situation, and it's one that you don't want to be in. But man, I just encourage you, do your best to find a therapist, somebody you can process that out with, and decide, can I draw boundaries that my dad will honor? Can I draw boundaries that my dad will work with me on? Can we move towards each other? And then just figure out your next steps. I hope that was helpful, man. You did get your own show, which is kind of cool, I guess. If anybody else has questions like that, feel free to write in. I don't say that as much anymore, but feel free to write in. Hit subscribe, share, and follow. All of those good things. If you like this, please share it. I cannot tell you how much that helps me. And give me a rating in the Apple or Spotify store or wherever you listen to the podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time, change possible.